How's it going, guys? Welcome back. Time to get some more fantasy football information going. I am finishing my series. I did running backs. I am finishing wide receivers today. I'm looking at my top 5 wide receivers. These are guys I love outside of the top 100 in ADP. Current status, this is July 29th as of recording. So I wanted to deep dive 5 guys who I think are going to smash their ADP, that offer some big time upside, and we are not currently really having to pay the price for it too much. We want to take advantage of these candidates because I think that they could help win us our leagues, turn the course of the tide of a season for us. Make sure you check out my other videos in this same vein if you enjoy it. Like the video to continue to push Relentless Press out there. We are very close to our first 1,000 subscribers. If you have not done so already, please consider making a subscription to the channel. It helps me out a ton. And with that out of the way, let's hop into it. My first wide receiver outside of the current 100 ADP, who I love, is Michael Thomas. The first thing we're gonna see is that strength of schedule, the second easiest in the entire NFL. Now, the days of can't guard Mike are over with. That is, I think, pretty likely. However, that does not mean there is not huge potential for him in 2023. We know that Michael Thomas was banged up last year, and the sample size that we do have from him is fairly small. However, it is solid. Last year, Mike owned a 20% target share and a 33% end zone target share, and he probably was not playing fully healthy most of the time. So being a part-time player with strong measurables that he showed gives us hope for a bounce back in 2023. Some other big things happened in the Saints offense this year, and the biggest one is Derek Carr's move to Big Easy. He is a big upgrade at quarterback for this team. The overall offense for New Orleans is going to be much better with him at the helm. Prior to last year, which kind of fell apart for Carr and the Raiders in general, Carr was an absolute stud for Vegas and for Oakland when they were there. He threw for over 4,000 yards in 4 straight years, and back in 2021 he threw for over 4,800 yards. So Carr is a guy who can air it out, and Big Mike is someone who, if fully healthy, and he should be, is going to be able to take advantage of it. Now, while this is probably Chris Olave's team, I would say 75% chance he is the true wide receiver one in this offense. However, that does leave a possibility that Mike could take the #1 role in Big Easy. Probably not, but even as the wide receiver 2 in this offense, he has a big upside, and he's being drafted as a wide receiver 4, not even a wide receiver 3 price we are going to have to pay. That means that the big time upside is something that we are getting for close to nothing, and we always want to take advantage of those type of opportunities. The last thing that gives him a little bit of a boost is the questions regarding Alvin Kamara in the backfield. If Kamara were to miss time, that means that the bigger slice of the pie is available in this offense, and can't guard Mike would benefit from it. The next wide receiver who I think is a steal at his current ADP is Jameson Williams from Detroit. He's going as wide receiver 49 at 114 overall. Now, I know that he has probably dropped and may continue to do so because of that 6-game suspension that he is going to have. I know that that is far from ideal for drafters. However, when he comes back, the first 2 games could be big ones for him. He gets Baltimore, he gets Vegas. Both of those teams were bottom 10 in the NFL against the pass in 2022. Detroit invested in him. They not only traded up to go and get him, but they traded up within the division, which is something that not a lot of teams do. They wanted him really bad, and they protected and probably overprotected him last year for a reason. When Williams returns from that suspension, he is going to be the #2 option in a Detroit passing attack that absolutely dominated for much of 2022. And the risk for him at this cost is very low. Ideally, you can even not draft him at all and then try to pick him up or trade for him in weeks 4 or 5. However, I think he is still worth the stash if that that is the route you have to take. The Lions were also a top 5 scoring offense last year. DeAndre Swift is no longer in Detroit. He racked up 110 receptions over the last 2 seasons, so even more receptions to go around for him. He is a deep threat and a big play creator. He offers weekly upside because of that. He had 1 catch last year, but guess what? It was a 41-yard touchdown. So he showcased that big play ability even in limited opportunities last year. And finally, the last reason I absolutely love him is because to get open deep, you need a little bit of time. But guess what? The Lions have one of the best offensive lines in the entire league. They were top 10 last year. They could be as good as top 5 this year. Plenty of reasons to love Jameson Williams, even with that suspension. The next wideout who I think is a steal at his current ADP is Allen Lazard. Went from the Green Bay Packers to the Jets, followed Aaron Rodgers, so to speak, and I think that is going to be beneficial not only for Rodgers, but for him as well. Last year, with Rodgers at the helm, Lazard racked up nearly 800 yards and he also scored 6 touchdowns. He finished the year as wide receiver 34, and he had a hefty 21% target share in a Packers offense that didn't throw the ball a ton. So now fast forward to 2023, and for some reason, Lazard, I would assume because of an increase in competition for targets, is now going 18 wide receivers later. Now, I don't understand this, and that's for a couple reasons. Number one, we know that Rodgers is not great at building rapport with wide receivers. So while Garrett Wilson is going to be the number 1 in this offense, we're not really sure by how much. He is going to be preferred over Lazard, who already has that rapport built with Rodgers. It is going to be a completely new system for both of these guys, and Rodgers probably goes back at least a little bit to what he knows because of that. And what he knows is feeding Lazard targets, especially in the red zone. Allen Lazard had the 12th most red zone targets in the entire NFL last season. The other thing is, even if it isn't a huge hit for Lazard, he could be a wide receiver 3 at best for us. That still means he is going to smash his current ADP. The last thing that we always want to do is follow the money in the NFL. And Lazard had a 4-year deal with $44 million, $22 million of that guaranteed from New York. So the Jets paid him like a wide receiver 2, even if he doesn't take that wide receiver 1 role in New York. Next up on my list is Sky Moore, a guy I absolutely love, from Kansas City. He's going as wide receiver 57 outside of the top 140 picks. The first thing that I will point out for Sky Moore is that stats do not tell the full story for him. He did not have a single game last year with 50% or higher snaps, but he was top 50 in both receiving grade and yards per route run. So even though he did not have a ton of opportunities, when he did, he was making the most of them. In the entire NFL last year, Sky Moore ranked 6th in yards after the catch per reception. So he was a big play waiting to happen when he touched the ball. Juju Smith-Schuster, the number 1 receiver for Kansas City last year, he is no longer there. Outside of Travis Kelce, there is nobody in this Kansas City offense who is commanding the lion's share of the targets. There's no clear next man up for Patty Mahomes to go to. Kadarius Toney could have been one of those guys, but guess what? Once again, he is banged up. So with that wide receiver 1 role just begging to be taken, Sky Moore may already have a leg up before we even get into training camp. Kansas City is once again going to be a top 5 scoring offense. They were number 1 in points per game last year. So I want pieces of this team, especially cheap pieces that are still relatively unknown. The Chiefs also drafted Moore in the 2nd round for a reason. They did not spend high draft capital to watch him ride the pine. He will continue to see opportunities for this offense, and his usage doubled over the second half of last season. So if that continues on, which it should, into 2023, it just means more usage and opportunities for more. When you take a look at the price tag and see he is an 11th round pick right now, it is very hard to find someone with more upside. The last wide receiver that I want to look at is from Cleveland. It is Donovan Peoples-Jones. He's going outside of the top 60 receivers at number 159 overall. I first want to look at the quarterback situation that DPJ had to put up with in 2022, because even with the shell of Deshaun Watson and Jacoby Brissett throwing him balls last year, there were still solid numbers for Peoples-Jones. He put up nearly 850 receiving yards, and he finished as a wide receiver 3, and he did that despite receiving under 100 targets and scoring only 4 touchdowns. First thing that I love is the floor that he showcased last year. He had over 50 yards 8 times from weeks 4 to weeks 13, so you cannot really ask for more than that. Elijah Moore is now in Cleveland, so targets could be harder to come by, but Moore has not really proven anything over the last couple of years, except that he can scare himself out of New York, and DPJ already has a rapport built with the Browns star quarterback. Another thing I like about his situation is that Kareem Hunt, the pass catching back in Cleveland, is no longer there, and Nick Chubb famously is not someone who we need to worry about stealing targets from. David Njoku has not been able to stay healthy at tight end over the last couple seasons. He probably doesn't siphon a ton of targets away, so there are plenty of opportunities and reasons to love Peoples-Jones in 2023. The last thing I wanted to showcase for DPJ is what the ceiling might look like. Deshaun Watson averaged 4,280 passing yards and over 28 touchdown passes from 2018 to 2020. So that 3-year sample size of him putting up massive numbers. So being a wide receiver 2 in this offense, which Peoples-Jones certainly could be, would mean massive numbers for him. He would kill his current ADP. And that wraps up my top 5 wide receivers outside of the current 100 ADP, who I think that we need to be taking advantage of and getting on our squads in fantasy. Please make sure you drop any questions down below. I love the comments. It is the main reason that I do these videos. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed the content. Subscribe as well. That helps me out a ton. This is Relentless Press. I'm your host, Abraham Opatz, and I will see you next time.